On February 28, 2026, the world was stunned as the price of oil skyrocketed past $110 per barrel overnight. This dramatic surge followed surprise airstrikes by the United States and Israel across Iran, killing Supreme Leader Khamenei, which ignited intense geopolitical tensions and sent global markets into turmoil. On February 28, 2027, airstrikes by the US and Israel against Iran ignited a geopolitical firestorm. Within days, retaliatory missile attacks soared. Oil prices skyrocketed to $110 per barrel. The Strait of Hormuz became a flashpoint, as 20% of the world's oil passed through its now turbulent waters. On February 28, 2026, US and Israeli airstrikes marked the crisis's onset, killing Iran's supreme leader. Within days, Iran's missile retaliation intensified, breaching defenses in Israel and the Gulf. Crucially, with 20% of global oil transiting the Strait of Hormuz, prices skyrocketed to $110 per barrel. The geopolitical landscape trembled, igniting global economic turmoil. Iran, a key player in Middle Eastern geopolitics, has long been a focal point due to its nuclear ambitions and its influence across the region. The Strait of Hormuz is critical here. About 20% of the world's oil flows through this narrow waterway. Historically, any instability around Hormuz has immediate global repercussions. During the 1980s, the Iran-Iraq War underscored this when attacks on oil tankers heightened global tensions. Today, as conflict erupts again, the stakes are even higher, impacting economies far beyond the Middle East. Today, the strategic Strait of Hormuz is a vital artery for global oil, with about 20% of the world's supply passing through daily. As tensions escalate, oil prices have skyrocketed to $110 per barrel, causing ripples across global markets. In the US, gas prices surged, while PJM's capacity auction has seen a 15% price hike, stressing energy grids. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Qatar are caught in the crossfire, intensifying regional instability. This geopolitical crisis redefines global trade routes and economic forecasts, echoing the gravity of the 2003 Iraq invasion. The 2026 Iran war has thrown the world into turmoil, with oil prices spiking to $110 per barrel, raising alarms across global markets. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil supply flows, teeters on the brink of closure. This critical choke point's potential blockade threatens more than just energy supplies. It risks escalating tensions involving Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Energy markets react swiftly. PJM capacity auctions see unprecedented volatility, reflecting a broader economic shock. Inflation concerns loom large as supply chain disruptions ripple worldwide, marking the most significant geopolitical crisis since the Iraq invasion in 2003. On February 28, 2026, a swift and coordinated operation by the United States and Israel sent shockwaves across the globe. Airstrikes targeted key Iranian sites, aiming to cripple its military infrastructure and leadership. Among the casualties was Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, a pivotal figure whose death marked a major turning point in escalating tensions. This surprise attack was a calculated move in response to years of mounting Iranian threats and regional aggression. Within hours, Iran's response was furious and formidable, launching advanced missile barrages that managed to penetrate the defenses of Israel, Qatar, and other Gulf states. These missiles were designed to evade even the most sophisticated air defense systems, showcasing Iran's military prowess despite the initial setback. Meanwhile, the impact on the global economy was immediate and severe. Oil prices surged past the $110 per barrel mark, reflecting fears of prolonged disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point where 20% of the world's oil supply transits daily. The ramifications were felt far beyond the Middle East, sparking concerns about energy security, inflation, and global supply chain stability. Iran's response to the airstrikes was swift and relentless. 19 days into the conflict, Iran unleashed a series of missile barrages targeting Israel, Qatar, and various Gulf states. These attacks weren't just a show of force. They were designed to demonstrate Iran's advanced military capabilities. Utilizing cutting-edge missile technology, Iran's weapons managed to elude sophisticated air defense systems, like Israel's Iron Dome and the US's Patriot missiles deployed in the region. The psychological impact of these retaliatory strikes was profound, signaling Iran's willingness to escalate the conflict further if provoked. The strategic significance of the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 20% of the world's oil supply passes, cannot be overstated. By targeting Gulf states and threatening this crucial choke point, Iran aimed to disrupt global oil flows, sending shockwaves through energy markets. Oil prices surged past $110 per barrel, exacerbating fears of inflation and supply chain disruptions worldwide. This escalation also rattled global stock markets, with defense companies like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon seeing a surge in stock prices as nations prioritized bolstering their military capabilities. The world watched anxiously as the crisis unfolded, fully aware that the geopolitical landscape was shifting dramatically. Just 18 days into the escalation, Israel's calculated attack on Iran's South Pars gas field sent shockwaves through global energy markets. As the world's largest natural gas facility, South Pars is a cornerstone of Iran's economy and a vital energy source globally. The strike aimed to debilitate Iran's energy production capabilities, intensifying the economic implications of the conflict. With South Pars' output severely disrupted, natural gas prices soared, reflecting the facility's strategic importance. This surge in energy costs exacerbated the strain already felt by the global economy, with inflationary fears looming large. Oil prices, already elevated, promptly breached the $110 per barrel mark, a level not seen since the early 20s. The impact on the PJM capacity auction was immediate, as energy suppliers scrambled to adjust to the volatile supply and demand dynamics. Globally, supply chain disruptions became more pronounced. Maritime routes like the Strait of Hormuz, where a staggering 20% of the world's oil flows, became hotspots of geopolitical tension as nations like Saudi Arabia and Qatar found themselves in the crossfire. As the crisis deepened, the world watched a reshaping of alliances, while economic uncertainties gripped markets worldwide. As the conflict intensified, oil prices surged, crossing $110 per barrel, a price not seen since the mid-2010s. This spike reflects immediate fears about the supply disruptions from the Gulf region, accelerated by escalating hostilities. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil supply moves, faces potential closure, a nightmare scenario for global markets. This narrow waterway is pivotal, as it channels nearly 21 million barrels of oil daily, critical to global energy security. Following the initial strikes, energy companies like ExxonMobil and BP reported stocks fluctuating wildly, while Middle Eastern airlines faced sudden fuel shortages. Global power grids felt the ripple effects, with the PJM capacity auction in the U.S. indicating sharp increases in energy prices, a sign of the turmoil's reach. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, significantly impacted by the Iranian missile barrage, intensified their security measures, further unsettling investors. As the world watches this geopolitical crisis unfold, oil's surge past $110 exemplifies the far-reaching consequences for economies and consumers alike, fueling inflation fears worldwide. As the conflict rages on, the geopolitical consequences are reverberating across the Middle East and beyond. Saudi Arabia and Qatar are caught in a precarious position, forced to navigate the choppy waters of regional alliances and their own economic priorities. The two Gulf nations, traditionally aligned with U.S. interests, are now weighing their responses carefully. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, is particularly vulnerable, as any disruption in oil production or transport could severely impact its economy. Meanwhile, Qatar, with its substantial natural gas exports, is acutely aware of the looming threats to its energy infrastructure. Adding another dimension to this crisis, former President Trump has made headlines with his inflammatory threats to obliterate Iranian gas fields should Iran's aggression further destabilize the region. This rhetoric has only intensified the complexities of an already fraught situation. Intelligence assessments suggest that while Iran's regime appears weakened, it remains resolute and capable of orchestrating further retaliatory measures. Globally, the economic ramifications are profound. Supply chain disruptions are becoming increasingly common, contributing to inflation fears. Energy markets are in turmoil, with oil prices hovering at $110 per barrel and impacting industries worldwide. Defense stocks, on the other hand, are seeing a surge as nations bolster their military preparedness. This geopolitical crisis is reshaping the world order, echoing the seismic shifts of past conflicts. With the escalation of conflict in Iran, global supply chains have been thrown into disarray. Key shipping lanes like the Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly 20% of the world's oil passes, are at risk, causing widespread disruptions. As oil prices surge past $110 per barrel, the ripple effects are felt far beyond the Middle East. Energy costs are skyrocketing, resulting in inflationary pressures that impact everything from manufacturing to transportation. For instance, companies like Ford and Toyota are grappling with increased production costs, leading to higher prices for consumers worldwide. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that Iran's retaliation targeted crucial energy infrastructures. As missiles struck, the electronic panels at the South Pars gas field suffered major damage, threatening the global natural gas supply. Meanwhile, defense stocks such as Lockheed Martin and Raytheon have seen considerable gains, up nearly 15%, as nations bolster their military readiness. The interconnected nature of modern economies means industries worldwide are bracing for a prolonged period of uncertainty, echoing the economic upheaval during the 2023 Iraq invasion. With oil prices surging past $110 per barrel, the tremors of the 2026 Iran war are rippling through global markets, testing the resilience of economic and political alliances. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point where 20% of the world's oil supply flows, has become a focal point of tension. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, caught in the crossfire, face immediate economic repercussions. As Trump threatens to blow up Iranian gas fields, defense stocks are skyrocketing, while supply chain disruptions heighten inflation fears, reminiscent of the 2003 Iraq invasion's economic turmoil. 19 days into the Iran conflict, the world teeters on new geopolitical fault lines. Oil prices have surged past $110 per barrel, exacerbating inflation fears and rattling global markets. The strategic Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil flows, remains a critical flashpoint. Energy markets are volatile, with gas prices spiraling and PJM interconnection facing turbulent capacity auctions. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Qatar find themselves precariously caught between retaliatory strikes. Trump's stark threat to obliterate Iran's gas fields underscores the high stakes. With supply chains disrupted, defense stocks soar, marking this crisis as a transformative global event. As this crisis unfolds, global leaders need to urgently focus on diplomatic solutions, harnessing the power of international bodies like the United Nations to de-escalate tensions. Collaborative security measures are essential to protect vital trade routes such as the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil flows. Economic stability hangs in the balance, with inflation looming and energy markets in turmoil. Coordinated efforts could prevent further global economic disruption. The crisis of 2026 underscores how swiftly geopolitical tides can turn, sending economic shockwaves across the globe. With oil prices at $110 and gas prices rising sharply, inflation looms large. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz choke point highlights the vulnerability of global supply chains. As nations recalibrate, defense stocks surge, and alliances shift, understanding these dynamics is pivotal for navigating an uncertain future.